Welcome to another SuPA exercise video. So today we'll have 5 exercises for you that you will do for 30 seconds on and 10 seconds off to get to your goal of either 5, 7, or 10 minutes of exercise. There's always going to be a variation to make the exercise easier or a variation to make the exercise harder. Remember for all exercises to have a sturdy chair nearby without wheels. This will help with the balance during standing and give you a good base of support for our seated exercises. Make sure that you're wearing sneakers or athletic shoes during exercise. Clear your space from any clutter or objects that are on the ground so you can move freely. And make sure to bring all of your exercise equipment near your chair prior to starting. Remember to always do what exercise variation feels the safest for you, and if you have any questions, ask your health coach. Remember that we're trying to get to the eventual goal of working at a 13 or 14 on this Borg scale, which is somewhat hard. If you need to start off a little bit lighter in a 10 or 11 range, that's okay. But again, the ultimate goal is getting to a 13 or 14. All right, get all of your stuff together and have a great session.
The first exercise is going to be a squat to a shoulder raise. You may want to stand near a chair with a dumbbell in your hand, move your feet apart to get into a squat, and next we'll be lifting our arms up to do a shoulder raise. As you do so, we're going to think about keeping our feet nice and flat such that our heels or our toes don't come off the ground. You may want to switch hands at this point. We're also going to think about keeping our back straight by keeping our core engaged and thinking about moving our belly button to our spine. We'll start our rest period in 2, 1, and beginning our rest. Feel free to put the dumbbell down and march a little bit by moving your feet and moving your arms about. And we'll now continue. As you do this exercise, you may also want to think about pointing your toes outward to avoid your knees caving in. In other words, we want our toes and our knees to be pointing in the same direction. And you can switch hands if you haven't already done so. As you become more comfortable, you're also going to try to think about squatting nice and low to get a bigger stretch in your thigh or quad muscles. And we'll start our rest period now. Again, try to keep yourself marching and moving about during the rest periods as well. We're going to be getting ready to do an elbow to knee exercise, starting now. You can cross your arms about your chest as you see our instructor doing in this video, bringing your elbow nice and close to your knee. For this exercise as well, you may want to stand near a chair, and as you can see, we're bringing the opposite elbow to the opposite knee. There's no need to always have your elbow and knee touch. We want to simply prioritize the contraction feeling that we get in our core muscles. We'll start a rest period in 2, 1, and resting now, marching about. And we'll continue our exercise now. This time, you may want to try going a little bit faster or by bringing your elbow a little bit closer to your knee. As you do so, remember to be aware of where your chair is, just in case you need to grab it for safety reasons. We'll start a rest period in 3, 2, 1, marching about. For our next exercise, we're going to be performing a squat with a hip abduction. Again, you may want to stand in front of your chair for safety reasons, and we'll start our squats now. After you perform your squat, you can perform a hip abduction by keeping your legs straight as we extend to the side. Like with before, we're going to think about keeping our feet nice and flat on the ground such that our heels or our toes don't come up at the bottom of the squat. We're also going to think about keeping our back straight by keeping our core nice and tight and thinking about moving our belly button to our spine. We'll start our rest period in 2, 1, and marching about. And we'll continue now. To add a little bit more resistance or challenge to this exercise, you may want to add a resistance band around your knees, as you see our instructor doing in this video. Placing a resistance band around the knees results in greater resistance and activation of your glute muscles, as well as the hip abductor muscles that move your leg out to the side. If you also want a little bit more challenge, you can think about sitting a little bit lower into the squat. And we'll start our rest period now. We're going to transition over to the wall push-ups. As you approach the wall, think about keeping the weight on the balls of your feet, and we'll continue now. And if you're comfortable, if you're feeling a little bit of discomfort in your wrists, you can adjust the angle of your hands to externally rotate them. As mentioned before, we're going to keep the weight on the balls of our feet, and we're also going to think about keeping our body in a nice and straight line all the way from our shoulders down to our feet. In other words, we don't want our hips to sag down. And we'll start our rest period now. Good. As we get back into it, you can add a little bit of extra challenge by taking a step away from the wall. This is going to add a little bit more resistance to this exercise, a little bit more weight on your hands, and if you'd like to make it easier, you can always take a step towards the wall as well. We'll start our rest period in 3, 2, 1, and we can march in place. Our next exercise is going to be wall planks. We can start by putting our forearms on the wall, and we'll bring our elbows nice and close together underneath our shoulders. As with the wall push-ups, we can make this exercise a little bit more challenging by moving our feet further away from the wall, and keeping our weight on the balls of our feet. And we'll start our rest period now. As we transition back into our wall planks, like with the wall push-ups, we can make things a little bit more challenging by taking a step away from the wall. We can also add extra challenge by bringing our elbows closer together or moving our elbows higher up on the wall. This is going to increase the demand from your core muscles. As with before, you may want to check in to ensure that your shoulders to your feet are in a straight line. And we'll start our rest period now. As we get ready to continue, we're going to start once again with our squat to shoulder raise. You may want to approach the chair and pick up the dumbbell, spreading our feet apart, and we'll begin our squat now. As with before, we're going to focus on standing close to the chair, keeping our feet nice and flat on the ground throughout the whole exercise, and also keeping our back straight. You can switch hands now. To help keep our back straight, we're going to think about keeping our core nice and tight by moving our belly button to our spine, and also keeping a slight bend in our elbow. And we'll start our rest period now. Good. We're now going to transition to our elbow to knee exercise by crossing our arms on our chest, moving the opposite elbow to the opposite knee. Remember that we don't need to have our elbow and knee touch. We're going to prioritize the contraction feeling in our core. As you become more comfortable, you can start moving a little bit faster and bringing your elbow a little bit closer to the knee. We'll start our rest period in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, marching in place. As you march in place, get ready to perform the squat with a hip abduction. Standing close to your chair, you're going to squat nice and low to the ground, and then perform a hip abduction by keeping your legs straight and extending to the side. When we squat, we're going to make sure our feet stay flat on the ground, and we're also going to keep our back nice and straight by keeping our core engaged and moving our belly button to our spine. As with before, you can have a resistance band around your knees for the extra challenge if you'd like. We'll rest in 3, 2, 1, and start marching in place. You may want to move closer to the wall as we prepare to do our wall push-ups. And we'll get back into it now. Keeping the weight on the balls of your feet, you can place your hands on the wall and perform a push-up. To make things a little bit different or more challenging, we can perform a dynamic wall push-up as you're seeing in this video by pushing your whole body away from the wall while keeping your feet in place. You may want to start small and not push yourself too far from the wall such that you carefully avoid falling backwards. And we'll start our rest period now. We'll stay near the wall as our next exercise is going to be the wall plank. And we'll start now. This time when we do our wall planks, we'll make it a little bit more challenging by extending at the hip while we keep our legs straight. You'll notice that this exercise involves a relatively small range of motion. In other words, we're not moving our feet too far back. And this is intentional because we really want to avoid arching at our lower back, as you see their instructor demonstrate now. We still want our body to stay nice and straight, but simply adding the hip being extended. And we'll start a rest period now. Getting ready to continue with our squat to shoulder raise. You can pick up the dumbbell, standing close to the chair. And we'll continue with our squats now. As with before, you may want to monitor your feet to make sure that they're staying nice and flat on the ground. When you're lifting up to do the shoulder raise, try to pay attention to your elbow to ensure that things are not locked out straight, but that there is a slight bend in your elbow as you perform the shoulder raise. We'll start a rest period in 3, 2, 1, and we'll rest now, marching in place as we do so. We can start to get ready to perform our elbow to knee exercise, again standing near a chair and bringing the opposite elbow to the opposite knee. With each repetition that you perform, make sure you are feeling that contraction in your core. We'll start our rest period in 3, 2, 1, and marching in place. You can get ready to perform the squat with a hip abduction, either with a band around your knees if you'd like the extra challenge, or without. And we'll start squatting now. As you perform the hip abduction, try to monitor to make sure that your legs are relatively straight as you move out to the side. Also, try to sit as low as you're comfortably able to sit into your squat. Remember that you can have your hands on the back of a chair if you'd like the extra support for balance. We'll start our rest period in 2, 1, resting now. We can now move closer to the wall again as we get ready to perform our wall push-ups. We'll place our hands on the wall, and again we'll be doing this dynamically. So you can push off of the wall as you see our instructor doing in the video, but remember to start small and gradually increase the force with which you're pushing. If you're experiencing any discomfort at the wrists, feel free to externally rotate your hands or move them higher or lower on the wall, depending on what's comfortable for you. We'll start our rest period now. Marching in place, moving both the legs and the arms about. and we'll stay close to the wall as we get ready to perform our wall planks. Again, we'll be demonstrating the more challenging version if you're comfortable doing this. We'll be slowly extending at the hip by keeping the legs straight and moving the feet back. Remember, we want to avoid arching our back. We're going to focus on keeping our body straight and moving our legs back.